So let's get started with the square root of 90. What's the first thing we're going to do to simplify that, Maze? We're going to do a factor tree. So how does 90 factor? Okay, Maze's going to do this one. How about the 9? 3 times 3 and the 10. Okay, and then what are we going to do? Okay, so we're going to write this in standard form. So we're going to change the 90 to these, but we're going to put them in order. Be sure you're keeping your work organized. Put the equal sign between your steps. All right, that's something that we want to see on your paper when you're doing this. Keep your work organized. And then we also need the square root, because all we're doing is we're replacing the 90 with the prime factorization for 90. So what's the order going to look like?
2 times 3, 3 times 5.
Okay, and then what are we going to do? Okay, do we have any pairs here?
Yes.
Pair of 3s, right? So what's going to happen with those 3s? All right, and then what's left on the inside?
2 times 5.
Okay, good. So when we have a pair, that's a square. The square cancels the square root, and that goes on the outside. Okay, but remember, when we have a pair of 3s, it's just 1 3 on the outside. Right, so anytime we circle something, that goes the outside. Anything that's not circled, anything that's left over, the 2 and the 5 in this case, that's going to stay on the inside. All right, and then there's one more thing we need to do to simplify this. Yeah, so the 3 stays on the outside, and then we multiply 2 times 5, and we get 10 on the inside. So we get 3 square root of 10. All right, who wants the 81? Dick?
Okay, you want to do your factor tree on the 81?
Okay.
You want to do 9 and 9 because that goes in the 81.
Okay.
And you want to, under each 9, put 3 and 3 because 3 times 3 is 9.
Okay.
You want to circle them.
Okay, those are prime, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
You want to do your equal sign and write the square root sign and do the 3 times 3 times 3 times 3.
Okay.
You want to circle the both pairs, 3s.
All right, so we have a pair of 3s here and a pair of 3s here. Since everything's circled,
They're on
then
the outside.
they're going to be on the outside.
Therefore, there's no need for a square root sign. So it's
Exactly.
3 times 3 is 9.
Okay. Okay, so everything's circled, so we don't need the square root anymore. All right, be careful about that, because what some people do is if everything's circled, they put it on the outside, but then they put the square root over it. Okay, that's not on the outside, it's on the inside then. So then we need to simplify that and get 9. Perfect. Now, since we got a whole number answer, what does that mean about 81? What kind of number is it? It's a perfect square. Okay, did anybody do this one a different way? So last week, when we had a problem like this, we actually did this problem a different way. Does anybody remember that? So this way works, this way is perfectly fine, but when it's a perfect square, especially when it's a perfect square we know, what can we do?
81 squared.
Not 81 squared, but 9 squared, right? So we could rewrite this, instead of doing the prime factorization, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, we could say that 81 is 9 squared. Then what can we do?
Cross the square.
We can cross the square and the square root out and we get 9. That's the way we were doing it last week, right? So when it's a perfect square, you can do it this way if you want, but the other way works. It's a little bit longer, but the other way is always going to work to simplify a square root, whether it's a perfect square like this or not a perfect square like, well, this.
So we did
How does the 210 factor?
And so, you can do that minus just there, and also it just gives you 24.
Since this does end in a 10, you could do 21 times 10. Jordan did it with a 5, though, so we'll go ahead and do it that way. So 5 times 42. And we know that 5 goes into it because if it ends in a 0, 5 has to go into it, just like 10 does also. And then how about the 42? How does that factor? 3 times 14. Okay, so the 3 is prime. 14 keeps going.
And also 2, 3, 5, 7.
Okay, so in the square root, instead of 210, we have 2 times 3 times 5 times 7. And I'm forgetting one thing, though, Jordan. What am I missing here?
Probably 2.
Yeah, the 2 in the coefficient, right? So we need that 2 in the coefficient there also. Don't forget that. Now, Jordan, can we simplify this one?
No.
Why not?
Apparently, because no one.
We don't have any numbers inside that are pairs. We don't have any that match up. So that means that we can't simplify it, which means then, since we can't simplify it, that our answer is going to be the same thing as the question. So we could multiply it back out. Don't forget that 2 out front. And then when we multiply 2 times 3, we get 6, and then times 5 is 30, and then times 7 is 210. Same thing we started with. All right, so you can rewrite it like this, or if you get a problem like this that doesn't simplify, what else could we do, Jordan?
Box the question.
Yeah, so we could rewrite it like this, or we could just put a box around the question like this, and we wouldn't have to do this part over here.